An active plot by ISIS to launch an imminent attack on Jewish schools in Turkey has been foiled by Sky News. Terrorists from the so-called Islamic State have advanced plans to target kindergartens, youth centers, and schools of Jewish children, most likely in Istanbul. Now, information on what intelligence officials are describing as an imminent attack was obtained from 6 operatives from the Caliphate who were arrested in the southern city of Gaziantep over the last week. Well, Sky News managed to get this information, this intelligence, from these 6 operatives who were arrested last week in Gaziantep. They've now uncovered what they said was more than a credible threat, an active plot to target school children, Jewish school children in particular, in Turkey, most likely in Istanbul. So obviously they're on high alert there. I would imagine that Jewish children all over the world, especially with what's going on with ISIS, especially in Turkey, where they have close to 3 million refugees, where it's a route in and out of Syria, are probably on high alert with extra security all the time. But you know, this latest intelligence, it's basically emerged as spy agencies have been struggling to sort of cooperate their response to the scale of the threat that's now existing across Europe. And this is just another attack that they said is expected in the next 24 hours or so.
For sure. And you know, even here in Los Angeles, you have a lot of Hebrew schools. There's always security outside of them. And that's always been like that, not because of ISIS, but you know, before I was even born, that's always been something that you see even in a city that's considered safe like LA. So to see something like this, in a way, to me, isn't necessarily all that surprising, especially in a place like Turkey, where we've unfortunately seen so many attacks over the past few years, suicide bombs and other things like that. I feel like that's just part of ISIS's, that's their thing. All they have to do is basically put it out there and build that fear. They don't necessarily, a lot of the time, even have to do attacks for them to get their point across and for them to kind of accomplish their goal, which is to instill fear in the West and make them feel like they're not safe going to school, going to the airport, going on the train. They just want to make sure that we're scared all the time. And that's what they hope will happen. But if we stand up to that and we show them that we're not scared, well, in a way, we're fighting against that. And that's all we
It's interesting how, in counterbalance to that fear, there's so many reports coming out of the West now of the fact that these attacks on civilians are happening because ISIS is losing ground in the Middle East. John Kerry went over to Belgium last week and he visited with the Prime Minister, and he came out and he spoke about the fact that ISIS is faltering in the Middle East, and that's why they're ramping up attacks on the West. It's like a beehive that gets scattered, and the independent bees go and cause little bits of chaos. But it almost seems to me like it's kind of propaganda-ish to make people who have nothing to do with this war, who are just, you know, sitting at home with their family, feel better about the fact that there is this fear that these attacks could happen to any one of us at any moment. Do you think it's a mistake to say that these attacks on civilians were likely not planned?
Out of desperation?
Yes, rather than them being planned all along.
I don't think so, because we have to understand that he went to Brussels and he is, you know, speaking out to these families specifically that lost somebody in these attacks more recently, not to mention Paris and all the others. But we have to understand that he went there to let them know that they should maybe feel a little better, because that there is truth to that. They are losing ground rapidly. Palmyra in Syria, now there's efforts in Mosul in Iraq to take over and take that back from the Islamic State. They're losing ground rapidly. They seem to be losing key figures within their structural organizations. So I think there is some truth to it. Yes, it could be seen as propaganda because it's kind of timely. But at the same time, you can't deny that they are losing ground, and rapidly too.
Yeah, ISIS has definitely faced losses. They've definitely increased these unconventional tactics, but it's certainly not much of a consolation prize to be put across in that way. Oh, they're only attacking civilians like you and I because
feel better because it's out of desperation.
Because it's out of desperation. I want to read you a quote from Nick Haras. He's a Middle Eastern expert with the Center for New American Security. Here's what he had to say about that. The West should expect that ISIS has developed a contingency strategy to authorize more attacks inside of Europe, even in the event that its would-be caliphate is collapsing in Iraq and Syria, and that even in its dying days, ISIS's pro-state will try to punish Western countries that hastened its end. Well, Defense Secretary Ash Carter, he's vowed to further accelerate efforts to destroy the extremist group. He's talking about seizing places, people, freeing hostages. It's supposed to make us feel a little bit better, the fact that these attacks on the West are because of ISIS faltering in the Middle East. And even the likes of Sky News has managed to foil an imminent attack planned on Jewish schools in Turkey.